When we think of Paul's suffering, we think of so many different episodes. We think of him in the Philippian jail, singing in the midst of suffering. I think that's a really important point to mention right at the start. We sing and we suffer. And sometimes we sing about our sufferings. And as we sing about our suffering, as we sing in suffering, we learn how to live through suffering. Nearly a third of the whole of the Psalter is lament, where the people of God cry out to God in their suffering, and they walk through their suffering, not rejecting God and not running away from God, but with God, and asking God to be with them in the midst of their sufferings. And Paul knew about that in the Philippian jail. And I think Paul sang in his sufferings, and we should sing in our sufferings, and we should teach our congregations to sing in their sufferings. And if all our worship sets, as they're called, are filled with only happy songs, I think we do a great disservice to the people we're ministering to, because they need to be able to sing their tears, as Paul sang his tears. But more than that, we can learn with Paul not to give up, to keep on, to persevere. Paul suffered all the way through, and right at the end of his life in 2 Timothy, he says, I'm being poured out like a drink offering. Right to the very end, he suffered. And we need to learn from Paul and with Paul to persevere through suffering right to the end. Our faithfulness is only faithfulness if it takes us right through to the finishing line. So we can say with Paul, I have run the race, I have fought the fight. And expect to hear our Lord say to us, well done, good and faithful servant. And as well as that, Paul was able to share his sufferings with the people that he was in ministry with. And I think of Timothy or Titus, and also people that he ministered to. We think of the churches that he planted. Paul was very conscious that they were concerned about him, and that their concern for him in their suffering could be transformed into prayer. And so he thanks the Philippians for their prayers in suffering, and he's sure that through their prayers he will be delivered from prison and released for effective ministry. So Paul learned to sing in his sufferings, to persevere in his sufferings, to share his sufferings with ministry colleagues, and to share his sufferings with people in his community. And I think if we do those things, then we'll find that our suffering is not transformed into something easy, but it's transformed into something meaningful with our Lord and with his church.